A long time ago in a galaxy almost far, far away, four makers unite in order to share and discuss their maker knowledge and some interesting topics along the way. Join us as we light the spark that brings back your childhood in the Almost Star Wars show!
Oh, folks, welcome back to the Almost Star Wars show. I am Brian with the Smuggler's Room, along with the rest of my hosts.
Dennis with the Black Market Outpost.
CG Artist.
And I'm James from the Rebel Base Build.
Can you believe this? We're back doing another recording. Less than 5 days since the last recording. Is that
it's a
right?
record.
I love it.
It is.
I love it. We missed all you guys. And I missed you guys last week. I apologize. The Sarlacc is a dangerous place to get sucked into. So today's topic we want to start into is, where do we draw inspiration from in our project builds? And I'm going to go right to Dennis and have you kick us off and tell us a little bit about that.
Oh man, a lot of books. Like through the years, I've collected a lot of books. Obviously, nowadays you have the internet, which you draw other builders. There's lots of places to draw inspiration from. I think like my sort of inspiration is just stuff that I see, kind of like sparks it, and I just want to go make it.
Is it books like novels that you read, comic books? Is it the artist rendering books?
I've done a lot of comic books, but it's a lot of like coffee table type books.
Yeah.
You know, where it's the art, like the Art of Star Wars series is just absolutely fantastic. I mean, you see stuff in those books that you don't normally see in a movie. Like you might not realize it's there, but in the book, they'll sort of detail it. And you're like, man, I really want to build that.
Yeah. James, what do you do? Where do you get inspiration from?
Well, first of all, I want to say what a cool coffee table you've got there, Dennis. I mean, if you've got those books, those comics on your table, I'm coming round, man. Yeah, for me, I think because I'm a kind of a 3D guy, I like to see things in motion. And I mean, for sure, I've got art books and I love looking at concept art and things, you know, not necessarily just concept art from the making of the movies, but also other people's concept art. There's some great websites online for all that. But honestly, I'm more inspired when I play video games or I watch the shows. I'm loving the live action stuff right now because, you know, hit or miss, it all looks great. And there's also so much stuff in there to draw from. And I think seeing something move within the 3D space is kind of what gets me going. You know, being able to see around a droid and see it from different angles and all those things. You know, pictures are wonderful, but for me, it's moving images. And then I want to just kind of make that. And I want to work out the engineering of it, make it fit together. And that's, yeah. And I've got into that more and more, I think, since live action shows have been around. So yeah, that's what does it for me. The movement, the visuals.
Nice. Ron, what about you?
Similar to James, the video games do it for me. One thing is there's a couple of websites that I like to go to, and one of them is ArtStation, which is just fantastic. Yeah. I mean, the amount of things just in Star Wars, but just all over the gambit of sci-fi and fantasy. You know, there's plenty of stuff there that I like to look at. And Pinterest, you know, just to see some real world things. Both of those sites combined, and I get all my inspiration from there.
Did you look at the ArtStation ILM? I think there was an ILM challenge that ArtStation had.
No, I didn't see that. Wow.
That was beautiful.
Yeah.
There was one on, I think there was one on environments, wasn't there? And one on speeder, I think, as well, at some point.
Yeah. It was like an entire, like all the different artists went in there, and then they told different stories or reimagined vehicles and droids and all that kind of stuff. Sorry, I cut you off, Ron.
No, because now I'm going to go look at it. So you can keep talking while I go and surf that.
That's like one of my favorite things, man, because you look at all that art, you look through the books, and that's the point where you can like combine things, right?
Yeah.
The top of this with the bottom of that. And
yeah.
Oh, man, I just love that stuff.
I think what's cool about some of the concept that you find online is looking out for people that used to work on the games or on the movies, and I think when the time passes or their NDA is over, they then go and post all of their stuff on on the site. So you can trawl through high detail images of BD1 and all that stuff.
Yeah.
It's just fabulous because these guys deserve that recognition. They want to show the stuff off because they have spent. I mean, I know. Well, you guys know, it takes insane amount of time to work this stuff up, particularly in 3D, in a computer. And when you look at the stuff that they're putting out on screen, man, is that stuff detailed. The BD1 model is insane. There's some really high res images of that, even under the foot that you don't really see. Right. It's all there, and that just, that, use the right term there, Ron. That does it for me, man.
Yeah, the other thing I like about that is, like James is saying, is when those artists release their stuff, you get to see renderings of what they wanted to do and not necessarily what's in the movie. So you get to see different iterations of a BB-8 or a particular blaster or anything like that. And they always usually post, from beginning to end of what they were designing at the time, what got accepted and what they were working on throughout the process.
There's an artist named, we'll put it in the links so that if I butcher this, I think it's Matt Sav Concepts.
Yeah.
I think he's the one that did the DD3 that we built in the background there. But I saw his concept art of the solo blaster, the whole configuration when it's the rifle.
Yes.
That Woody Harrelson's character takes apart. And he had it all on his Instagram feed, and you could go through highly detailed views of every angle of that whole thing and how it went together. So for people like us that want to make those things, having that kind of artwork that you could get to that nitty gritty, like you guys said, with the detail, you could then assemble it and build it, and you can see it.
I'm guessing it's the same from you then, Brian. It's images and concepts that gets you inspired.
Yeah, I don't think I have one specific spot. I mean, Ron mentioned Pinterest and ArtStation, and I live in those. And then James, you were talking about the live action motion. So yeah, I'm taking still shots of that. And when Dan was talking about video games, I started laughing because years back we used to play Star Wars: The Old Republic, the big online RPG game.
Yeah.
It's the only video game that my wife and I ever faithfully played together. And the group of people we would play with would get angry if we were on a mission because they're running towards an objective and my character's jumping up and down to get a better look at something on a wall. And I'm taking screenshots and doing all kinds of stupid stuff like that because it was being able to run around in that environment, get textural references that, you could take it back and build it. Yeah. The only reason I got the Oculus was because James told me about the Tales from Galaxy's Edge.
Yeah.
I don't even care that there's a game. I just walk around in that space and take screenshots of everything from every angle.
What I tell you about that cantina, right?
Gosh. Yeah. Yeah, no doubt.
Some really beautiful stuff in there. That door behind the barman, that door at the background.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, incredible.
Yeah, the texture in that space and the construction of the actual bar of all this scrap stuff thrown together. That's what gets me excited.
Yeah. And as soon as I saw the wrist gadget, I was like, I want to make that. I still haven't made it, but I want to make it.
It's weird when you think about what triggers our inspiration, right? I mean, we all do it. I just never really sat down to think about, I'm getting it from books. I'm getting it from this, from that.
Yep.
And it's generally, it's always something different, right? You could be driving by something and when James did that video with the rust from around his town.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I was like, oh man, how do I paint that? How do I do that? I mean, all that stuff gets you at some point.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. That's why you end up pulling the juice lid off of a Simply Juice container out of your refrigerator, right? Yeah. Just because you start seeing the world in a different way, which isn't really any different than, when they go to, the people I'm the biggest fan of in Star Wars is Roger Christian, because when A New Hope was being made, that was the set decorator. That was the guy they went to and said, can you figure out how to make this on a shoestring budget? Yeah. I think if they had a massive budget, I don't think we would have gotten what we got.
No.
I mean, that's what I
would agree with that.
And I think that plays out as well in some of the modern stuff, As I say, it still looks great, but there are some scenes that are rendered just too far.
Yep.
And particularly in the movies, some of those locations. Again, I'm not going to bash on the films, but there were some examples where they just had too much money to play with, I think. And places like Canto Bight, for example, or Coruscant. Coruscant can look very different depending on who's visualizing it.
Right.
And there's a real ragtag, kind of dirty, broken down version of it, and then there's a real are like high class, and then, of course those are different areas on the planet. But
I was just going to say, is that levels, right? Is that
yeah. But I think there's still a way to visualize those class structures on the planet, but doing it in a way that isn't necessarily high renders and high quality. You know, it gets a bit video gamey, I think, in some of the modern stuff, just a little bit.
Yeah, no, I agree. We got asked recently about, this might be a little off topic, I hope not, but we were asked about our opinion on the Disney's Star Cruiser hotel thing, right? Because there's been all this back and forth, and oh my gosh, so we were asked about it, and I don't really have a problem with it, but what I'm missing is that texture and that grit that makes it feel like Star Wars. And someone kind of combated me with that by saying, well, the Empire is perfectly clean. It's not, right? I mean, in most cases, there's a lot of clean environments, but then you have something like the trash compactor or some of the hallways in the Death Star. There still is an element of grime, and not even grime. It's just, it's used universe.
Right.
You feel like it's been there for a long time.
Right.
Yeah. I thought about that, and I went on a bit of an experiment one night when I've had this conversation, maybe with you guys once, and I actually looked at some of the close-ups from the original movies, and when they zoom into some of the Imperial consoles, they are grimy.
They are grimy, yeah.
And also in the Mandalorian, when we see Imperial installations, again, I think what it is, I think it's the color scheme, and I think it's the shiny floors that gives it a feeling, and the contrast between the bright white lights and the dark colors. I think that contrast, it kind of, the perception is it's clean, and I think it is generally clean compared to Rebellion structures. But when you get up close, and you can see it,
To add a little to that, with the Imperial side, it seems like everywhere there's an important person, it's clean, right? And then you go off to the remote, stations or off site, and it's the same grime, it's the same, right? Stormtroopers on Tatooine, covered in sand, covered in dirt. Stormtroopers on the Death Star, I mean, shiny Snow White.
There you go, Dennis. What did I tell you the other day on message? I said, you are the voice of reason. We'll make something that's even a slight going down the critical route.
Yes,
and you'll come out,
I love it,
bam, with a justification. And I love your justifications.
Every Star Wars group needs a Dennis to get them back where they belong and back on path.
I was waiting for you to do it tonight, so I thought I'm going to nail that when it happens.
It's interesting about this. So we've got this topic where we're trying to think of things that inspire us, and inevitably that drives us to the aesthetic. We're talking about the weathering and the used universe and all of that, because I think that, at least for me, and I would assume for the three of you, is we're driven to that aesthetic. And I think that transfers over to, we were talking about Alien earlier this evening, and we were talking about Blade Runner. Those worlds look real because it's tangible. I think that's part of where I get inspiration from too, is when I see something that's just like it's been around for a while.
Right. Yeah, I agree.
I love the narrative as well. I love the narrative a lot of the sets bring, and like the Millennium Falcon or even the Razor Crest. It's like it's a self-contained thing. Yeah, you can imagine yourself living on that or being on that vessel. In the Razor Crest, we even see the toilets. You know what I mean? So it's like there's a whole like a complete narrative to that, and I think that helps.
You have the N1 behind you that speaks to exactly what you're saying, right? That narrative, right?
It's almost like the ships and creatures, everything, they're their own character, and so when something happens to it, like the Razor Crest blowing up, part of us dies inside too. Like, no, now what?
We've got no toilet at all.
It's like there's a hint of real world in all that stuff, right? Like you can see yourself on that ship, in that cantina. It just has that, I don't know, it's like that real world feeling. I could have went there yesterday if I wasn't doing nothing.
And maybe that's why we like to recreate it, because of that feeling. I know certainly that plays for me. It always has done. I've said it in my videos before. I like recreating it. One thing it is interesting, though, talking about inspiration. I've tried to sort of hit the paper and pencils and come up with something completely new. And I have to say, I find that a challenge unless I'm really looking, unless I'm not looking at reference if I'm looking at reference and I'm like, I think you said earlier, Dennis, I would bring this from something and put it on top of this and make something new. I still have to do that. I find it, me personally, I find it a struggle to just come up with something completely original.
Do you mean original within the Star Wars universe or in sci-fi general? What
I think, I mean, I don't know. I think I find it fairly easy to create Star Wars. I think what it is, if you were to say to me, right, go away and design a droid, I would find it difficult not borrowing from a shape or an item.
I see what you're saying, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think we're all in that situation. I get what you're saying now. I mean, everything we build, you're taking something from somewhere, right? From a control panel to who builds a control panel out of pinstripe? Not I. Even if you are creating it from scratch.
Right? It is hard to just sit down with paper and pencil for me too. The only time I get to that point is I've kind of had that idea or seen something, and just so I can record it and get measurements and everything and exactly how it might work in the space. That's when I start to go to paper and pencil. I know it looks like this, but I have a set amount of room. I need to fit this thing into that. Yeah. And there's some extra space on the sides. What do I fill that with? And then that's when I start doodling. And
I think it's almost like burned into our heads, right? Like, I'm putting this cosplay together.
Mm-hmm.
First thing I looked for was a black vest, right? Even though I'm trying to create my own character per se, nothing that you would see in the movie, like a background type character. So now I need long boots. Right? I could have went any other avenue, but you still kind of run back to what's in your head, what you're familiar with, I guess is the word.
Yep. Yeah.
It's almost like it's a base, because you start with what's familiar, right? You do start with it, but then once you get that base down, that's when you start to make changes and then add originality to it and make it a little bit different than the stuff.
Here's a little food for thought based on that. How afraid are we to not lean on that in the aspect of it not being recognizable?
Oh yeah, that's a healthy fear.
In other words, James's droid, for example, he wants to go design a droid all on his own.
Yeah.
Is the Star Wars guy going to recognize that as something that would be cruising the sands of Tatooine or Cloud City? Or, you know what I'm saying?
But I bet you guys would be able to pick out any little detail that is a Star Wars noggin or something somewhere, a little thing, Yeah,
if you used anything that was real specific, right?
There.
Yeah. It's that foundation is ingrained because we were all kids that grew up on it and thought about it, grew into adults, and we sit around and we talk about it. I mean, is there a day that goes by that the four of us aren't conversing in some level or not on something?
Cameron sent me a page out of his comic book a couple of days ago and asked me if I could find the orange juice lid. And I kid you not, I spotted the orange juice lid in mere seconds.
I can name that tune in one note.
Yeah, one note.
So James, you got my brain cranking. So I got two questions for you. Are you trying to develop something that's completely independent of Star Wars or any other franchise? And if you are, what are you doing so that you can actually get that done?
Two things I'm working on at the minute. And because at the minute I've kind of pivoted slightly, but not completely away from props and rooms. It's just at the minute, logistically, it's a bit easier for me to just concentrate on making 3D models and things.
Which we all appreciate.
whilst I'm nibbling away at some of the bigger room build panels and things, because I've recently made some changes. But I when I made the Scorpion, obviously it was clearly based on the Scorpion from Book of Boba, and I really enjoyed the, like you were saying earlier, freeze framing and recreating. And although there's a bit of artistic license in there, I think I said in last episode I made him a bit hench up top and the legs were a bit bigger. It pretty much was based on what I saw on screen, but it kind of got me thinking, because it was the first time I was ever able to really create, first time I've ever tried to create a multi-piece model that's slotted together. And I spent a bit of time thinking about how the legs would move, how they would connect, so that there could still be some articulation for people that wanted to print it out and play with it with their figures. And I enjoyed that. And I kind of inspired myself then to think, you know what, I can actually really interested here in making something completely different, although not different enough that it wouldn't still fit in Star Wars or
Sure.
sci-fi. But yeah, I'm kind of developing something at the minute, and I'm trying so hard not to share it because I normally share all sorts of work in progress images pretty much. And the minute I've got a decent render, I'm like, oh, I'm going to share that. I'm trying not to do that this time because I want to just be able to show it when it's kind of done. So there will be a droid. I'm still going to call it a droid. It's going to be a big droid.
Sure.
And it'll be multi-piece with some articulation as well. But I'm also going to allow for using parts like that already exist, like LEDs, so make sure that there's the right diameter holes to put them through. So I'm going to try and think of the builder, think of the user in that. And the second thing I'm working on is, and I will tell you what this one is, the first scene in The Mandalorian where he walks into the bar and you have the door, the iris door.
Yeah.
I'm making that, and I want to make it work as a playset so that you could almost spin something and that actually opens up. I'm not sure if that's been done. Maybe it has. Maybe someone's already done that. But I want to do it. I'm kind of fascinated with moving parts now on 3D prints. So that's something that I'm playing with, and I've got something that works in the editor. Haven't printed it yet, so we'll see.
That's fantastic. Mad. Yeah, that's fantastic. I love it.
Yeah, looking forward to that.
Yeah, I like any of this stuff that influences us to do anything different as makers or creators in any form, right? It's just because the foundation is drawn off a specific sci-fi movie or even a collection of them, that ingenuity or that creativity just keeps spinning, and it starts us down paths of doing something else. I'm working on a board game, a 3-dimensional board game with my nephew. I sat with him at a Thanksgiving dinner where he explained to me what this game would be like. And I don't have children, so when I sit with my nephew and I hear his imagination go into hyperdrive, I'm even using Star Wars references to describe imagination. But he explained this board game in complete vivid, with all the vivid imagination that he could, and he was pulling Sonic the Hedgehog and Nintendo and Mario Brothers and Star Wars and Lord of the Rings, and he's telling me a story about what this is. And he didn't even hesitate to draw on that for inspiration as to what he was looking for it to be like.
Brilliant.
So I think that anyone that gets hung up, like I'm trying to hang myself up in this conversation of how do I think of something without referencing Star Wars or something else? I think we're probably better to do a reference and build from that than to try to reinvent a wheel, right?
Yeah. If I could just tell you something real quick. So in my day job, as I think some of you guys know, well, I know you guys know, but some people watching might know, I teach 3D design, sort of game development. With May the 4th coming up, one of my colleagues actually, Alan, hi, if you're watching, one of the other teachers, he sort of said, why don't we do something Star Wars themed, which we did last year. So in the 3D design disciplines and 2D design disciplines, we encourage the kids to have a look online at Star Wars references and create anything they want using 2D or 3D software, pull it all together into a mini video, but like a bit of a reel, and then release it on May 4th. And interesting that you said about starting with a reference, because unfortunately and sadly, some of the kids just aren't into it. So some of them haven't watched any of it, which kind of saddens me a little bit.
Yeah.
However, I know, like, what are you doing in my classroom? But we're making some changes there. Of course, we're going to make that happen. But a lot of them are into it, so we get to see the difference. And this is the point I was going to make. I can see those that are into it, that make Star Wars, and they watch The Mandalorian mainly, and then they've gone back and watched the movies because they want to understand Luke Skywalker's role and all that kind of stuff. So they've gone that way. And they're making TIE fighter mixed with a scout walker with lightsabers instead of guns on the head. It's weird and wacky, cool stuff. And then the people that haven't seen it have gone straight to the BB-8s and the R2-D2s and the lightsabers, maybe because they're slightly easier models to make, and they're making something new. So I guess what does that answer is, it doesn't really take long to steep yourself in a bit of Star Wars lore, because there's so much of it out there. Yeah. And if the brief or the scenario is make something Star Wars, anybody can do it, because there's such a big sand pit to play in.
Yeah.
And I find that quite interesting. In fact, what I'll do, I'll in one of our upcoming shows, I'll share some of their stuff. Well, actually, they'll be tweaking it anyway,
please.
so I'll share that. Be quite interesting.
That'd be awesome.
But yeah, I get to play Star Wars at work as well. So
That's cool.
So we've been talking about the inspiration, where we get it, why we get inspiration, where we get it from. I'm curious now with our second topic is, are there projects that we've done in the past that we're either about to redo with fresh eyes or that we have redone with fresh eyes? And Ron has a massive project in his home theater. So I want to direct you, Ron, to you go first. Sure. It doesn't have to be about your home theater. I'm just curious, after doing that much work, where your mind is on all that.
I'm going to tear it all down and start over. No.
I know,
which isn't far from the truth. Yeah. So when I first created the theater, and it's funny you say going back with fresh eyes, because I had to develop more skill to see my dream through. So I developed it, and I thought, okay, for example, the back wall. I put a picture in there which made it look like you were looking out of the window of a Star Destroyer, and it was static. And I was like, man, I would love to have something moving, but at the time I didn't really know how to do that. Then as I got more skill, I thought, okay, I can build an entire wall, put a TV behind it, and then put that window in front of that. And then it just all started to click into place. And then luckily met Brian, and I decided to start filming this stuff. Because we were talking earlier, I missed my mark and didn't film any of the theater from beginning to end. I took plenty of pictures. Like, I could tell you the exact day that I started it. And it's funny because it's a cardboard cutout on the floor that was a template, and the first pieces of wood. And it's like, I think it was like June 1st of 2019, but I digress. So there's that. And then this might be the Libra side of me. I don't know what it is, but I'll make something, make it all the way to completion. But in the back of my mind, I'm like, man, I could have built that better. Or again, I get new skills and I'm like, man, I could do it like this now. So then I'll scrap that and start all over on the same thing with the hopes of making it better and then adding more to it. Things I wanted to do in the first place. So that's usually what gets me in trouble.
What I love more than anything on that whole story is that you referred to it as acquiring skills. Mm-hmm. Not you bought a better tool or you bought a more expensive tool. That happens, but for you, it was all about the skills. And I think that's something that's probably inherent for all of us on every project we do, is it's learning something we didn't know before so that we can improve on it. Right. That's cool. I like that. What about you, Dennis? What is there? Do you have a list?
Similar to Ron. I mean, when I first started doing this stuff, obviously I was watching you. My very first project was a complete clone of what you did. I made the droid collar, identical to yours almost. Then I thought to myself, there's got to be, I wanted to do a panel so bad. Right. Like and nothing either. Just, I wanted to take a bunch of Greeblies and just cram them into something and make something. Mm-hmm. So again, like Ron said, acquired skill through, watching you guys and learning things. And my background is as a machinist. So, I can make parts, I can do all that kind of stuff, but you got to have the visual and the imagination of how to put those parts together, right? In my day job, they hand me a print and I make what's on the print.
Sure.
It's a little bit different thought process.
Is there any of those that you've made thus far that you look at your machining skills and you say, I made that, like the droid collar? Have you thought, you know what? Now I know what to do. I could go back and make it again.
Yeah, absolutely. Nowadays, I'll be honest with you, like screws and nuts and bolts and things like that, I'll turn it to the right size. I'll get out there on my lathe and I'll make that screw. I won't go try to find a 3/8 to, fit one of the lightsabers I'm building, or I'll just sit in the garage and make it. Yeah. This panel right here was my first ever panel, and electrical box, some plywood is in there. The actual outer frame is the frame cover from one of those flip down TVs from an old minivan.
Oh,
it'd been sitting around in the garage forever.
Yeah.
I don't even know where I got it from, but I actually had the TV portion of it up on the wall, and I was using it as a TV. And that frame sat around forever. And I was like, you know what? If I build it inside that frame, it'll look like the front panel's missing.
Yep.
And everything else is in it.
Yeah.
And it was just like I said, learning from you guys and what I've seen out on the internet, just gather stuff and start figuring out where it fits. And
yeah,
I weathered that thing probably 5 times.
Okay.
I weathered it. I hated it. I sprayed
Yep.
it all back to black. I weathered it. I hated it. And it was all, and at the time you don't realize it, right? You're starting to get frustrated. Yeah. You're like, I don't know what I'm doing, but you're acquiring the skill, like Ron said.
Yeah.
By the 4th or 5th one, I'm like, okay, it's got to look like a scratch. It's got to be a streak. It's got to be this and that.
Yeah.
And I think that's just how you develop. I mean, look at, who's a perfect example for this? Tony.
Oh yeah.
Tony is
Tony,
like,
definitely. Yeah. That
I mean,
it's like a book.
Bounds.
Yeah. You see the first aspects of his room and then the most recent aspects of his room. Yeah.
Leaps and bounds. And it's all acquiring skill.
Yeah.
That's why it drives me like up the wall and people say, oh, I can't do that. I don't know that. I can't do that. You can tell me you can't do that, but you can tell me that after you've messed it up 2 or 3 times.
Right. Can't gets in people's brains.
Yeah.
It sticks and it stays there.
Right.
Yeah. I agree. James, what about you? Is there a project that you're?
Have we even got time to talk about my incomplete project? Do you know what? I felt like I was doing good, and then Boylai brings out, let's make a droid bash challenge. I'm like, yeah, I want to do that. And then I get back to my project, and then Brian says, let's do a speeder challenge. I'm like, yeah, okay, let's do that. And then poor old Whitey, I didn't do his last challenge because of this very reason. I'm like, no, I need to stop the challenges now.
Yeah.
No, I'm joking. I enjoyed taking part in those challenges, but honestly, I have many. I mean, I was doing a big push for the weapons rack at one point, and I'd actually built a lot of it. Planned a lot of it, filmed loads of it, and just didn't like it.
Yeah,
I really didn't like it, and it's now non-existent. I ripped it all to pieces and started again. I will do it, but it has to feel right. I have to have the design where I want it, and because I've recently sort of changed direction with the room a little bit in terms of going on a slightly different theme, more Fallen Order, less Millennium Falcon. I want to make sure that I capture that as well. So I'm excited. There's going to be lots more room build stuff. And I'm still going to do a weapons crate. But yeah, I've got lots of unfinished projects. And I think I put it down to maybe 2 reasons. I think one is life is just busy. And I will start something with all intentions of cracking it out. And I have this mad idea in my head that, I've got a weekend. I've got a long weekend. I can model this, make this, film this, edit this, voice over this in 4 days. Who am I trying to kid?
Yeah.
That doesn't work. So then I start looking for sort of smaller, easier projects, and then they do get completed because they're smaller and easier. So that's why that's one reason. I think the second reason is the bloody Room Builders group. There's so much cool stuff on there, and I get inspired. Yep. I get knocked as well. I mean, because damn, that stuff's good.
Inspiration paralysis, right?
Yeah. Just like overstimulated from all those wonderful pictures of amazing things. I'm like, dude, this is so cool. Mm-hmm. So yeah, for those reasons, I've got a long list of incomplete stuff.
Yeah.
Well, I'll get there. I'll get there.
Of course. Yeah. I don't think there shouldn't be a rush for it. When we started the whole recording of stuff, it was my wife's idea because I had built a room twice, once all the way through pretty much. The first time was kind of a start and stop, but when I went back to do it again, she said, well, you can only do it if you record it. My first reaction was, who the hell's going to watch it? Knowing full well that there was people out there like me that would watch it. Right. But the concept of filming it did 2 things. One, it made it challenging to be able to make progress on a week by week basis while working a full-time job. Like that was the first. So like you said, time and life is busy. But then the other thing that crept into my mind was I'm not going to do any of this unless it feels like it works, because I don't want to do this again. And I also don't want to rush through it to the point where I don't enjoy every single little piece of it.
Yeah.
And then what Ron and Dennis are talking about with skills, from the time I started this current version, which has been a couple of years, I understand, but since I started it, there's certain things I learned that I want to use those skills to incorporate in that space. And then, like you mentioned with the Room Builders group, there are people there doing things that I never thought of, which is what makes that group so incredibly wonderful. And everyone's so willing to share what they do. And I'm watching different groups of people are joining forces in different ways at different times. Like right now, Jamie Dole and Ado Morin are combining their different skill sets. Ado's an incredible illustrator, and Jamie does a lot of technical stuff with animation, and they're making,
Fabulous
HUD
stuff.
displays and just really cool stuff that people are doing.
Mm.
So there's a part of my brain that says, slow your roll, bro. Like, let's let a few people come up with some ideas you can steal and put in your room.
Soak it up. Soak it up.
Yeah, I'd love to have a little bit of everybody in that space. So and
Like,
I mean,
who would have thought that notches are so damn good?
Yeah.
For
right, dude.
I actually mentioned that. I mentioned that to James just yesterday or the day before. So by the time he's done designing everything, my room's going to be so
Right?
neat.
If in
It's
doubt,
going to be a bunch of just a bunch of printing.
it's not working. Add a notch. If it doesn't look
Add
like
a
Star
notch.
Wars,
Yeah.
add a notch.
Should be it's not working at a notch. Absolutely.
Yep. Uh-oh, put that on a
We need
shirt.
T-shirt. I'm going to have a T-shirt for that one. Yeah. Cameron.
Yeah, I don't know. I look around my shop and there are unfinished projects everywhere. You can see the Chopper's over here. He's barely started. There's stuff everywhere. And I was so hung up on that. So when Dennis brought up the subject of, what did you finish that you'd go back and start again, or whoever, it was Dennis or whoever brought up that topic. I was like, yeah, I'm all for that. And I build a project 10 times. I think it was Adam Savage is built how many different Blade Runner guns? 3 or 4, until he perfected it and got it the way he wanted. And putting a clock on it or some kind of time constraint is I think is a disadvantage to anyone that's making anything. Because if you're not enjoying why you're doing it, there's no reason to do it in the first place.
Yeah.
My wife would probably like the basement to just at least have carpet in it at this point. I mean, it's been 7 years.
Yeah, I mean that's really true what you said about if you're not enjoying it, etc. Because although the garage is happening as originally planned, I've been working on the office. I mean the benches in here at the moment, office, workshop, studio, whatever you want to call this. I do the miniature builds in here. I do my filming and my editing and stuff in here. But after watching other builders doing things with other spaces, not just their main space. I mean, you've been doing it, Brian, with your workshop. You've been Star Warsing things.
Yeah.
I've got a whole new idea of what I'm going to do in here. So that's another element. Maybe that's the third element about just wanting to keep doing more, And there's nothing wrong with that. It's a hobby, right? I mean, it's a hobby. And for some of us, it's a bit more than that. So just do what makes you happy. Crack on, get it built.
How much do you guys think that what's the word? Like losing interest in that project and setting it aside plays in the not finished projects?
110% when it comes to certain projects.
Yeah.
I'm staring at one. This Ron's got one right there.
Yeah.
Yep.
It started off well, and there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean there.
No, is that a lost interest, Ron, or is it another shiny object caught your attention with more of a grip?
The latter. Yeah. Something I wanted to do something else. And I know I should be sanding this guy. And I was even going to make the beginning of an episode where we were going to duke it out because I hadn't finished him and he was getting impatient and angry. That might still happen actually. But
I know how to fix this. I know how to fix this dilemma for you, Ron. Somebody needs to launch a new challenge to build an IG droid. There you go.
Oh boy,
there's the motivation right there. See,
then K2SO is going to be completely out of the picture because I'll focus on an IG droid immediately.
My wife does all of our editing, So, and she's very regimented. So there's a schedule, right? And we'll sit down in one of our meetings and we'll lay out the schedule. And inevitably, I break the schedule. She'll come out in the shop. What are you doing? I'm working on this. That's not on the list. I know. I just changed. I want to do something else.
Yeah.
I actually finished this stupid gunk droid. It's sitting right here, and it's been 18 months since the last time I touched it.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
I mean, talk about
No,
losing
it's that
interest.
long.
That thing was in the corner. When I pulled it up, there were cobwebs and dust and dirt from every project that I've done over the last year and a half. It's a perfect example of just wasn't interested. I wasn't interested in doing anything with it. I just didn't care.
Yeah, I think it becomes like a quite common thing for us, though.
Yeah,
Right?
how many
'Cause
unfinished lightsabers are in
it's-
your box in your shop?
Oh, that you guys have seen the box. The box is loaded to the top. It's
Right.
that's a 30-gallon container, and it's loaded to the top with unfinished parts.
Damn.
The pit droid is over there across the room in a rocking chair with no legs.
What do you think? What do you think the actual moment is where you can lose interest in something? What that must mean on the flip side of that is that there must be a part of the project that we all really, really love. And once we've done that bit, it's like,
So I think there's a few different scenarios. Pit droid, for example. Since I've started printing the pit droid, they've come out with a motorized head. So when I figured that out, time out, I'm waiting. When the files get here, I'll print it. By that time, I'm building a helmet, I'm building a lightsaber, I'm doing a diorama, I'm doing this, and it's now, I don't know, Ron, when did I get that? Last October?
Right?
I've met some people in the Room Builders group that have gone from concept to done space in a matter of 5 or 6 months, and had conversations with them, via, messaging or whatever, and had them say, well, I don't want this to go on forever. I just wanted to get it done. And then I've asked, well, what are you working on now? And the response has been, what do you mean? And at that moment, I realized, and to kind of answer your question, James, is I think there are some of us that there's just an endless supply of things that we're interested in making.
Yeah.
Whether that's a full scale droid or a room build or dioramas, and we can't get enough of just all of it. So for me, as soon as I see something that I get super excited about, and Boyle has ruined my life because, man, do I want to build miniatures of everything. Just because it just is so satisfying to see what he builds. And I love building in that scale.
What we're really saying here is it's the conversion from I'm building to I've built.
Yes.
Right? Because like you were saying about the guy you're chatting to about, What would Brian, what would you talk about if you were no longer building the smuggler's room? Yeah, I mean, you still build all your props and things, but it's a large part of it, right?
Yeah. It's my wife calls it the mythology. She was a big X-Files fan, but we both were. And in X-Files, you had individual episodes that stood on their own. They were like little mini movies, right? They would go investigate something creepy. But the mythology was Mulder wanted to discover the truth behind aliens. So for 9 seasons, there were scattered episodes throughout a season where it followed the mythology. So she calls the room building mythology.
The overarching story arc. Yeah.
There you go. Yeah, there you go.
So that's it. We all have our overarching story arcs.
Yeah.
Yeah. Never ending.
That's okay.
When you find out what mine is, can you let me know?
I think you have it right. I mean, your room build is a story arc, and it's starting to develop. It's starting to shift. You built the Falcon bench, and based on your video, it was a lot of nostalgia of growing up with it and your childhood. But now, with your career as a 3D artist and a professor for that, your love for the video games and finding that balance and kind of merging those two things together. If you ask me, I would say that's your story arc.
Yeah. I guess. Yeah, I like that.
I mean,
I'm going to write that down. Hold on a minute.
It just takes a little bit of a spark, and then you're back on track with whatever you were doing.
Yeah,
I mean, that's all it is.
The rebellion.
The TIE fighter helmet.
Yeah.
I got that from Van Oaks Props 3 years ago.
Oh,
it sat in the garage on the shelf for 2.5 years.
Yeah.
And all it took was one paint job, and then I was like all into it, man. I just went all crazy with it. hoses and greeblies and stands and everything. And it just, something has to reignite. I mean, it's just what it is. Things will sit around, then all of a sudden you'll be like, now I know how I want to do that. And you get out there and you do it that way.
Yep. So it's kind of been like a therapy session of, progress on projects. Okay, I think that's going to do it. That was a lot to discuss right there, and I'm really glad you guys shared all that with us. If you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, and we'll be back again very soon.